Welcome to the Program Design Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Monique, teacher and curriculum writer turned program mentor and business strategist for coaches, educators, and online experts. Whether you're looking to create your first ever group coaching program or scale your current offer for more freedom, revenue, and consistent income, this is the podcast for you. Here you'll find practical strategies and encouragement mixed with a bit of manifestation and intuition to help you grow and design a program you absolutely love. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Program Design Podcast. In this episode, I want to share how I structure my live events so that clients really get results and not just notes. And this is coming from my perspective as an educator. And one of the biggest pet peeves that I have when it comes to live events, trainings, anything that I've come across, I found that there's this tendency, we'll say, in if you go to a paid live event or even trainings within groups, is there's this real emphasis on speaking on stage and creating content, delivering content. And to me, it's quite focused on the speaker and not on the person actually absorbing the content, on the listener. And it's not very transformational. So in this episode, I want to share how to think about structuring your trainings that goes beyond just delivering content and having clients take notes. I want to share how I think about creating a group training that really gets results. And this might be for you if you have a one-on-one practice and you find that you're saying a lot of the same things over and over again, and maybe you want to create more of a content knowledge-based teaching workshop. So then you can do more of your actual coaching and deep dives one-on-one with your clients. Or maybe you're running a group program and you want to do more effective, longer term trainings. This can help with that. But basically the idea behind this episode is if you're creating some sort of one-off training, how can you do it so that it really creates results for people and not just an overwhelm of information or not just a bunch of notes? So I want to share how I think about structuring my live trainings so they get results. And we're going to break this into two episodes. So in this episode, it's more about some of the mistakes that I see people making and what to do to avoid them so that your trainings really create those results. Or even the thing I find with, if you're anything like my clients, you're already naturally creating results. You're already good at what you do. This is just taking it to the next level because you have expertise in training in your area of expertise in your industry. And we're just overlaying it with how to structure things well from an educational perspective and how to get results in a group. Because even it's not just education, even if you're coaching, even if you're addressing beliefs, there's still a way to structure it within a group. So we're going to talk about some of the mistakes that I see, more about the preparation today and how to think about it overall, more of a principles. And then in episode 2, I'm going to dive into my exact framework. So today is really setting the stage. You can start to think about how you can run your live trainings. And then in part 2, we're going to dive into my exact formula, my framework. The first thing that I want to share is a lot of us tend to see sharing content as teaching. So maybe you are thinking back to your university days, or what you've seen a lot in the industry is there's this idea that we share content, that is teaching. But to me, that's not actually teaching. That's just delivering content. Teaching isn't lecturing. You want to structure it in a way that is not just putting the emphasis on just delivering content. It's about two things: knowing what content to deliver and also helping people engage with the content. So I would much prefer to share less content and have people dive deeper and engage with that content rather than giving them a ton of content that they take notes on. And sometimes people think oh, I just want to have more engagement strategies, or how can I engage people more? And it's not engagement for the sake of engagement. To me is that's not really great. Yeah, it feels good to have people engage with your content when you're running trainings and things. But it's not about engagement for engagement's sake. It's how can people engage with the material so that they get better results. So instead of like covering content within an hour or 2 hours, however long your training is, this is about how to choose how to provide or deliver less content and give people more opportunities to interact with the content. Does that make sense? And just a distinction that I was going to mention at the beginning that I didn't hear is that I have done a series before on live experiences. The ones that I did before on live experiences were more to bring people into your world, for them to be some sort of conversion event that brings people into your paid programs. This is for your paid clients. So this is either if you're going into someone else's program, to really do a deep dive training, or you're doing a one-off training with your own clients. This is how to structure the content. So just so that we're clear on that. So you don't want to just cover content the whole time when you're creating a training. Instead, you want to have a smaller bit of content and you want to help people engage with it so they get better results. So that might look like, yes, they listen and maybe they take notes. Maybe they're asking questions, definitely. But we want to go beyond that, like things like how can they interact with the material in different ways? Can they write about it? So maybe they're journaling, maybe they're answering questions, maybe they're brainstorming ideas, maybe they're planning, maybe they're mapping out, writing things down. And then are they speaking about it in some way? So maybe they're engaging with you when you're doing some one-on-one coaching with them in front of the group, or maybe you're doing breakout rooms, or if it's a smaller room, everyone gets to speak. Like, how can they speak about what they're integrating into their world? And then we want to be taking action steps later. So it's less about just people passively absorbing content and more about helping them engage with that content in a more active way so they can start to integrate it. So let's take some examples here. So say you're in the fitness wellness space and you're talking about how someone could change the way that they're eating, like how they're planning their food, for example, how they're fueling for their workouts. I don't know. Then you might talk about, okay, like brainstorm how you're going to actually integrate this into your week, or when could you take action on this strategy, or how are you going to bring this when you go grocery shopping? Or what does your meal planning look like? Or plan out your meals now, like something where they actually take the concept, the principle, the theory that you are sharing, and then they go to actually integrate it in their own world. And you want to give time for people to actually write about it, and then they can talk it out. And the main reason I like to engage with material this way is that some people, and if you ask your clients, people almost always have an answer for me whenever I ask them this, is, are you more of a think to speak person, or are you more of a speak to think person? So if you're a think to speak person, you're the kind of person who generally, I mean, these are like tendencies, it's not always going to be the same, but you like to gather your thoughts before you speak, and you might want to write, consider, decide before you go to speak out what you think about something. And someone who's a speak to think person is like, you think out loud, you like to talk to somebody, bounce ideas off of them, and that helps you like formulate your plan. And if you are a speak to think person, sometimes we don't give people enough opportunity to write things down and think things through before they speak. So I like to give people both time to think about things, time to speak about it. So it's less focused on me being like the sage on the stage and more like a guide on the side. Sage on the stage, guide on the side. Like I'm a guide on the side. So I share the concept and then I help them integrate it. And I might be coaching them through that, or talking or answering questions as they go to integrate it. So it's less about me delivering a ton of content. I deliver less, and then I'm helping them integrate it into their lives by helping them write about it, speak about it, etc. So we don't want to just deliver content the whole time. We want to give opportunities for them to engage in that content. The next thing that we want to do is get a sense, and this is a teacher term here, of their pre-existing knowledge. And also, this is not as much of a teacher term, this is more in our coaching space. What are their existing beliefs or existing misbeliefs or mistakes that they're making around the content that you're teaching? So we want to get a sense of where your people are at before you start. What a lot of us do is we take a skill that we're going to teach and we just talk about the skill during a training. And if you want to get people results, it will be so much more effective for you to get a really strong sense of where they're at in their journey first before you even decide and you create that content for them. So for example, I'm going to be speaking in a friend of mine in her program. We're doing an exchange. So she's coming to speak to my clients and I'm going to be speaking to her clients. And I'm speaking about this topic, very meta, I know, about how to create a really strong live training that gets results, right? And the first thing that I did before I even started planning out what my content was going to be about is I checked in with her and I got, where are your clients at with this? What is their level of knowledge? What is their belief? What are the mistakes that they're making? So I got a sense from her that, okay, a lot of them are doing more one-on-one work and they're repeating themselves a lot. And they might think about doing like a one-off training that teaches one kind of skill, but they've maybe never done it before. And they might think like, oh, that's not possible for me to get great results. I have to do it one-on-one. Like that could be a misbelief that her clients have. Or maybe they've done some trainings, or they even do have a group program and they want to deepen their work and get even better results in a group setting. And they want to make sure like, yeah, I know I can do content well, but like, what are some like tips and tools to make sure that I'm really using strong, like I'm getting the results and I know that they're actually getting results. How can I do that? Right. So those are some of the concepts that came up when I talked to her, and that helped frame out how I'm going to structure that session on creating live trainings. And I'm obviously going to go, it's going to be more personalized because I'm going to have a lot more interaction with her people, but it'll have a similar flow to what I'm doing today in this episode. And so you want to get a sense of the audience that you're going to be speaking to, what their pre-existing beliefs, mistakes, and knowledge is, because that's your starting point. You don't want to talk over their head where they're like, I don't have a clue what you're talking about, or give them too much that they really can't take action on. We want to start where they are, and you can do that by getting a sense of their pre-existing knowledge and beliefs before you even create your content. And that's usually by checking in with them, or if you're doing like a training in someone else's program, like checking in with the facilitator or the mentor. You definitely want to check their pre-existing knowledge, either by talking to them, maybe doing a survey, any way that you can get a sense of where they're at in the topic that you're going to be teaching on. The next idea to think about are using feedback loops. So feedback loops is a strategy that I teach a little bit in my program in pilot program design, which is to help you create your first ever group program. But we really dive deeper in signature program design into how to use feedback loops. And I teach that you can have feedback loops before your trainings, during your trainings, and after your trainings. And basically what feedback loops are is a lot of people think, oh, a feedback loop is probably like a Q&A session. And Q&A is an example of a feedback loop. But for me, just having like delivering content and then doing Q&A at the end isn't as effective as it could be, because I would like to have a check-in throughout my trainings, my workshops, so I can kind of gather where people are at, and I will change how I'm delivering my content based on that feedback. Does that make sense? So you're getting feedback from your people, and then you're looping it back, and it's informing how you're moving forward. So I teach it in my program how to create intentional feedback loops that will inform how you're even structuring your whole program, your signature process, the whole thing. But you can also do it in live real time as you're running a session, like as you're running a training. And so it's not just creating a survey at the end. It's not just doing Q&A. It's having intentional checkpoints that will guide you and how you're providing your content from there. Does that make sense? So say you're a parenting coach. I'm going to give you a clear example of this. And you're running a training for parents. The first thing I would want to know is like, what age are their kids? First off, what are they experiencing? And then I'd want to get a sense of like, where is their existing knowledge on the topic that I teach? Are they on board with some of the concepts that you might teach, like self-regulation, for example? What have they tried? Have they gone to therapy? Like, where are they at with it, right? That's the pre-existing knowledge. And then I would want to have some clear feedback loops so that I can change and tweak my training as I go, which when I first started doing this, I admit it does feel a little bit daunting because it feels a lot easier to just be prepared and go through your slides, right? But it is so much more effective when you can have a feedback loop and then change your content. You might spend more time on a concept. You might spend less time on a concept. You might dive deeper in something you weren't preparing. You didn't prepare in advance because you know it's really relevant for the people in the room based on your feedback loop. So say if I'm a parenting coach and I have parents in front of me, I would probably start with a feedback loop of like how old are your kids? So then I can give examples specific to your child's age. And then B, I would start to be asking things about the specific thing that I teach right at the beginning. So I could dive deeper into their pre-existing knowledge, and I'd have them write it in the chat or share it out loud if I'm doing a live training like in person. So that would be at the beginning. I also want to do one maybe like, what's your intention? What's your goal for this? What are you hoping to get out of it? Again, it gives me a sense of what they're hoping to get out of it, and I can get a sense of where they're at. I might say like, what challenges are you experiencing in this particular area that I'm working through? Like maybe we're talking about, I don't know, how to get your kids out the door without them having a meltdown. I don't know. And they might share the challenges that they're specifically facing around that thing. And so that gives me a sense of where I want to go with my content. So when I think about using feedback loops, they're again like ways to check in with your people. So sometimes it's like asking questions and having them respond in the chat or out loud. Sometimes it is like you asking specific questions and getting their responses in a call. It might be when you're in a breakout room, you're listening to what they're saying and what they need help with. That might inform how you're changing your training. So what I like to do with feedback loops, which it is a little bit more, it requires you to think a little bit more on the fly. But if you can have an overall plan for how you're going to run your training, but then have very specific check-in points, and that will dictate how you spend the rest of your time. So if I'm a parenting coach and I was planning on spending a lot of my time on, I don't know, self-regulation strategies so that you can respond to your child with empathy and kindness while still promoting, like while still having boundaries. And then you realize actually they are regulating well. It's not a regulation thing. They're calm, but they don't have the boundaries to back it up. And so they're afraid, maybe they're afraid of like shaming their kids or like providing like too much negative consequences or something like that. And you're like, actually, we really need to work more on boundaries in this session, more than I was planning on it. So that's an example of like, you might have an idea where you need to go, but when you have the feedback loop earlier on in the training and you can get a sense of where they're at, be it like with their responses, with the questions they're asking, like purposeful check-ins, then you might change the direction that you go. So you have an idea of where you're going, but you might spend more time on something and less time on something else based on what that particular group needs. So it's like this dynamic like co-creative experience, like a co-creation. Sometimes that really resonates with people when I use that word. It's a co-creation. It's not just you just like delivering content and people taking notes on it. Does that make sense? So it's like, okay, where are you at with it? It kind of is like combining a little bit of what you would do one-on-one in a group setting. So like if you're doing one-on-ones with someone and you're a therapist, like you're not just gonna like dive into whatever content and have them listen the whole time. You're going to see like what's coming up for you. How are you feeling around that? What went on when this was going on? What's coming through your mind right now? Whatever. You want to ask those same kinds of questions in that group setting so that you can respond appropriately. So it's like you have this overarching plan, but then you're responding and interacting with them using feedback loops at the beginning, throughout your training, and then at the end. And then the last big idea to think about is the difference between a training where your clients take notes and one they actually walk away with a result. So the thing that really inspired me on this one specifically is that what I notice is sometimes I've hired coaches, one-on-one, group, whatever, and we have a really great session. Like I had this one where I hired her and she did like Telegram. A Telegram is like a WhatsApp or like Voxer. It's like a messaging app, right? And she did this really great session with me and I found it super, super helpful. It was like so much information. I got tons out of it around my messaging. And then the time was up and she was like, great. Oh, this was helpful. And then we just ended and it felt very abrupt. And I had no like concrete way of, okay, what am I doing with this? How am I actually going to integrate this into my business? And that's when it really hit me that I was like, we really need to, as the mentor, as the coach, facilitator, whatever, make sure that people have a plan for how they're going to take action on this thing afterwards. And actually, when I think back to when this really inspired me, like you might think of it as homework from back in your school days, because obviously I'm a teacher, but it actually comes from earlier than that when I was working. And I don't know, maybe you did something similar like this when you were younger. But originally I had wanted to become a therapist. And I spent a year volunteering at the crisis center. So people like the suicide line. So people would call us in crisis and I'd help them deal with like the acute crisis. So like talking people off the bridge kind of thing. Then we would make an action plan with them so that they could find safety. And so my kind of like the format of that call was like, first I helped empathize and like kind of de-escalate their extreme crisis. And then we created a plan once they were more regulated to find help after this call. Like, what are you going to do to take care of yourself? Who are you going to contact? Like, what can we do to make sure that you're safe moving forward and that you're taking care of yourself after this call? And I think the same principle is really effective in our trainings and our live trainings as well. And it's something I think that I could even probably do a better job in my program. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I get really in the moment of like coaching someone and we go a little bit deeper. But the more you can provide a time where you have an implementation where people actually get a clear plan of how they're going to implement this, and you leave that towards the end. So it's not just clients taking notes, but it's results focused, and you're helping them create an action plan or how you're going to integrate this after this call. So you might be doing it throughout as well, obviously like giving them chance to write things down, plan things out, whatever, but also like helping them get a sense of like, how are you actually going to integrate this into your real life afterwards? And the reason I share this is because when I was working with teachers in productivity, I did with entrepreneurs too. One of the concepts that I taught was a lot of us say, I'm going to work on something. I'm going to work on my landing page. I'm going to work on my course. I'm going to work on my podcast, whatever. And we have no concept of whether we've done it or we haven't at the end. Instead, we want to produce a result. Everything that you do should produce a result. Like right now, I'm recording a podcast. I'm batching 3 out right now, but I'm going to have my podcasts all recorded and done by 1:00 this afternoon so I can meet my next client. Like that's going to be the result that I produce. Your lessons and sessions and training should be the same. They should have an outcome, a clear outcome, and they should produce a result. Everything you should do should be result focused, right? So at the beginning, I like to say like, create a clear result. This is what we're working towards at the end of this. And then at the end, we want to give them a chance to actually decide how they're going to integrate this in their lives. So in my experience, for example, I might give someone okay, let's take action. How are you going to integrate this in your business? When are you going to take action on this? What's your next step? Is anyone unclear? Like, let's talk about it so you really know how you're going to integrate this in your business next. If I am in a different niche, so like coming back to the parenting example, I might say, okay, what of these strategies are you going to try with your child next time? Or like, what is a stressful part of your day? Which strategy are you going to try next? How are you going to speak to your kid? What are you going to do when you feel like yelling or whatever it is, when you feel triggered? So I would give them concrete time to make an action plan that they can take action on after the call, after the training, so that they can walk away with something tangible as well. And if they get stuck, which is usually what happens, and this is again a feedback loop, they'll say like, oh, I'm not sure what I need to do, or I'm not sure what I should take action on. Then you help them, you coach them through on that. And so everyone has a clear plan of how to integrate what you've actually worked through in that session. So let's recap, and then I'm going to share what it's going to look like next week when I chat through this in a deeper way. In this episode, it was really about the overall principles or what I've noticed a lot of us are doing and how to think about it instead. So the first thing is that when you're running a live training, we're not just sharing content. We're sharing less content and giving people more opportunity to engage and interact with the material so that they can really integrate it and learn it. And also it gives you an opportunity too to be like, oh, actually, I thought I could just teach this thing, but I need to help them and I need to coach on this mindset piece or something like that, right? So it's giving them an opportunity to integrate and engage with your content so that they get a better result. The next big idea that we shared is that we don't want to just share on a piece of content like just out of the blue on a specific skill that you're teaching. You want to go in and see where people are at. So like, for example, if you're teaching, like say you're an athlete, like a coach of athletes, and you're teaching about pacing, you wouldn't say, I'm just going to teach pacing. You would first get a sense of like, are they pacing? What do they think pacing looks like? What mistakes are they making with their pacing? How is it affecting their workouts? And then you can use that to actually inform how you're going to map out your content. The next big idea that we shared was about feedback loops. So feedback loops are not just a survey at the end. They're not just Q&A at the end. They're purposeful, intentional points of contact that you have throughout your session, so you can get a sense of where people are. Are you losing them? Do they need this help? Maybe they're actually okay with something, but they need more help in something else. Like, I often will say, like, okay, let's talk about, like, for example, if I'm doing it right now, if you were right in front of me, I might say, like, okay, on a scale of red, yellow, green, red being I have no concept of how my things land. I just share content. It really makes me nervous that I don't know how people are going to take what I've shared. Or maybe yellow, you're like, I think I've got a few feedback loops, but I don't have a ton in place. I'm not totally sure how people are finding the information. Or green, I'm so set. I know exactly where my people are. I can, like, that, everything that they share informs my content. Like, where are you at with feedback loops? So that it was very meta. So that's another example of, like, I want to be checking in regularly, and that will inform how I move through my content. And I might spend more time on something, less time on something I wasn't even anticipating talking about, because I am co-creating with the people in the room. So it's going to be the most valuable for them, rather than me just sharing my content from my perspective. And then the last big idea that we shared in this episode was about how to go beyond client notes. So at the beginning of your session, I always like to have people, I'd like to create a clear outcome. This is what we're working towards in this session. But even having them decide on what their intention or their outcome is for this session. And then at the end, getting clear on, okay, this was our outcome. Now, how are we going to integrate this? So giving them time to create an action plan, helping them through it. Even if it's a large training, you can still talk with a few people to get a sense of where they're at with how they're going to integrate, so that they can have a clear plan of how they're going to take action on what you shared, the content you shared, the belief shifts, whatever it is, how they're going to actually integrate that into their lives, into their business, into their careers, however you help them after your session. So they have that time to make an action plan and ask you for help if they get stuck. So I hope this was helpful. In next week's episode, in part 2, we are going to be diving into my exact formula for making this happen. So I'm going to share, like, this is exactly how I structure it. This is how I start. This is how I continue. And so you can get a sense of how I put these kind of principles in action in next week's episode. So tune into that episode. Take a look too, if you haven't listened already, I did share in the show notes what to include in a live experience. So if you're looking for, okay, you like this concept, but you're trying to think about how you might do like a paid workshop or a kind of like more low-key workshop that could bring clients in to your world, check out episodes 83 and I believe 84. That's another series I did on bringing people in, but this is especially for your paid clients. So next week, we're going to be diving into how to create that structure, my exact formula for it. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. Thanks so much for being here, and I will see you on next week's episode of the Program Design Podcast.